adopted.
I am adopted.
I learned that adoption can be a good option for someone facing an unwanted pregnancy, and that adopted children are very loved by their adoptive parents.
There's still a lot of stigma around adoption with birth parents. A lot of times you'll hear women say, "Oh, I can never give my baby away." And that's a stigma that happens, unfortunately, around adoption, when in fact, lots of women feel really good about their decision. They feel empowered because they were able to choose the people who are going to raise her child, but they also get to be part of this child's life.
I feel good about being adopted.
Being adopted isn't bad, and it's very great because I know that I am now in a better place to live, and I now have people to take care of me.
My family does treat me well. I feel very loved to the point where I forget that I'm adopted. I came across this one quote. My birth mother brought me into this world, but it was my adopted parents that gave me life. And I think that's just like really like inspiring to like adoptive children who are like feeling like, oh, like why am I here? Like what's the point of it?
But what do families who want to adopt a child need to know?
The statement I may have heard maybe from people who say, they have biological children, and they'll say, I've considered adoption, but at the end of the day, I just cannot because I would choose my own, over the one that I adopted, if it comes to a major decision. So, I think in such a case, if a couple feels that way, they are not suited to adopt a child. They should not. It's not their calling.
We chose adoption just because we thought it was a beautiful way to grow our family. And I truly believe that was something that God put in our hearts. And everybody is called to different things, and this is where we felt led.
So I think there's a lot of people that think about it but are afraid. And so I would just encourage them to take that first step. Just go meet with somebody, go meet with a family, that has adopted, or go to the agency and find out more. I think it seems like a big deal, and people always say, especially with the foster to adopt system, like, oh no, what if I wouldn't be able to handle it if the baby went away or the child was taken by a family member. But I think the way we're made, yes, it's painful, but people grow through the pain, and I just think we're so capable of doing more, so I would encourage people to take that first step.
Why are there more uncertainties in appeals in the foster to adopt option?
Unlike a relinquishment or domestic case, a birth parent is voluntarily relinquishing their parental rights. In a foster care situation, they have involuntarily been placed into the foster care system. So those parents are working towards services to help offer their children a safe environment to live in. And so sometimes the kiddos that we have here are newly placed. They still have visitation with their birth parents. Sometimes their birth parents have not been involved at all since they've been placed here. So we do get a wide variety.
Our first adoption was definitely more challenging. The paperwork felt overwhelming. And then just the actual, once he was placed with us, the actual amount of time it took was a long time, and there's stress involved with that. And there were a lot of appeals in the process. Also, certainly the second time was much easier. We knew exactly what to expect. The paperwork was far less intimidating, and a lot of it, because we used the same agency the second time, you do kind of start over, but a lot of that is easy to just autofill. And so it went much quicker. And then additionally, her process was just easier once she was placed with us. There wasn't a lot that came up against that. And so she just really needed a home, and they were looking for a home for her. And so it was a much quicker process.
For adopting parents, it's hard because it's not like, in California or in America, we don't have orphanages. We don't have babies waiting to be adopted, except through the foster care system. And if a parent does not want to adopt through the foster care system, they have to wait to be chosen by a birth parent. And so it's really hard to wait because they want to be parents and they've invested a lot of money, and often they're coming from a place of years of infertility treatments. And so they're ready, but they still have to be chosen. And that's a really hard process, a very emotional process. So one of the things that the state of California, and every state really implements, is every adopting parent has to have what's called a home study. And that is a home study that's done by an independent state licensed agency that will go in and visit their home, make sure their home is safe. They do both financial and criminal background checks, mental health checks. They look and see if there's any history of domestic violence or substance abuse. Is there any mental health history? And it's about a 2 to 3 month process that an adoptive family has to go through in order to get an approved home study. And they also, one of the interesting things is they also, adoption agencies ask for letters of recommendation from family, friends, and that's when they get the most accurate information a lot of times. And so we've had families that have not been approved for a home study because of information like maybe there is an active substance abuse situation, or maybe they know that there is some domestic violence in the home, and they will not get approved for a home study. And then after the adoption, so once baby's in the adoptive home, then there's 6 months of post-placement visits. So social workers going in, making sure that the adopting parents have the resources they need. And that's the best way to really prevent any ill intent, because you're seeing a family quite often.
With FCCA, you have more requirements, so it was paperwork, but we had to go in and have one-on-one interviews with the social workers, together interviews. We had a mentor family that had adopted that was working with us, a buddy family, and then we went and visited with a few more families that had adopted. Then we took classes online, and then we took CPR classes in person at the time. So it was quite a bit of work just to get through all the requirements, which I think were really good.
There were a lot of struggles because you rely on people to fill out your forms, and they always make mistakes. So that was very frustrating. But the most struggle I had was after we completed all of the documents, and then we sent them to our adoption agency and certified mail, registered mail, and then the whole package got lost, and everything that we did was gone. We had to redo all of the paperwork and pay a lot of money to pay all the fee again. So that was my biggest struggle, and it delayed our adoption for about a couple months. But it's all worth it at the end when China sent us our daughter's first picture. When we saw it, it's all worth it.
So for me, I think waiting is really hard. I think for our son from Korea, we waited. I think we did the paperwork for about a year and then just waited for a year.
Yeah,
so
about 2 years.
The waiting is really difficult. And then I would say specifically with foster care, there are a lot of unknowns. The end result is unknown. The child that's coming to you is unknown. The gender is unknown. The age is sort of unknown. So it's kind of hard to prepare. Even to buy clothing, if you don't know what child is coming, it's hard to prepare. And you don't know how long they're staying and if they're staying. So I would say with foster care, there's not as much waiting, but there's a lot of unknowns that I think a lot of people really struggle with.
Yeah, I thought the training was, sometimes they try and teach you or tell you all the things that can kind of go wrong, and they don't spend as much time maybe telling you all the things that can go right. And so for me, I was at first thinking, oh man, it sounded scary a little bit, but then as we've learned and now we've done this multiple times, it's good. It's all good.
And as far as also, I would say, with our own biological children, I mean, it's made such a huge impact on them. I think in their way that they view other not just other cultures and nationalities, but also like the empathy factor, right? And understanding that not everybody comes from a great environment, that there's people that come from hard places, and they kind of lived in a bubble beforehand, and I think now their eyes are sort of open, not that they know everything about it, but I think they're able to understand and empathize, in so many different areas because we've been able to complete this.
They could act or look different, but it could be the same because we're all unique and we are all human.
Adoptive parents are willing to go through a lot to adopt and care for a child. Your adoption journeys, with all their ups and downs, are truly amazing.